very good morning to all News 9 viewers. I'm Neha Bhan. We continue to bring you the latest updates on the Israel-Hamas war. Today marks day 15 since Hamas carried out attacks on southern Israel, killing 1,400 people and kidnapping 200 Israeli citizens as hostages. Here's the latest update from day 15. Now, in the latest update, Hamas released 2 American captives who were held in Gaza yesterday. The terrorist organization has stated that it is open to releasing more captives. Bombings persist in the besieged Gaza Strip, where several Hamas terrorists have sought shelter. There now, bombings continue in Gaza Strip, and regarding the death toll, as of now, 4,200 people have been killed in Gaza, while 1,300 have been left injured. 4,200 people have lost their lives in Gaza so far, and 13,000 people have been left injured. That's since the onset of the war on the 7th of October. Gazans continue to wait for relief materials. Meanwhile, people of Gaza still await relief materials, even though Israel's government stated that it will allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza through Egypt. United States President has also requested over $105 billion from Congress, and this is to provide security assistance for the ongoing wars in Ukraine and Israel. Iranian-backed groups warned U.S. military to leave Iraq. Iraq being closer to Israel, this is the warning being sent out to the U.S. military. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has also stated that this is in fact what he has stated, that the war, this is in fact a war that was not anticipated, and it is in fact the darkest hour, so to speak, of the world. Moving on now, 2 of the hostages, mother and daughter, have been released by the Hamas, and they were transferred to the Israeli border via the Red Cross. They were on their way to an army base in central Israel, where their families were anxiously waiting to greet them. Israel suspects that around 200 hostages are in Hamas custody after the terrorists from Gaza invaded the southern regions of Israel and took hostages. Right on your screens, these 2 hostages from the United States, who have been identified as Yehudit and Natali Raanan, were released by the Hamas, and they have been transferred to the Israeli border via the Red Cross. Hamas has released 2 U.S. hostages who were abducted during its deadly raid on the southern Israel on the 7th of October. Israel has also confirmed the same. They've stated that we have in fact received a mother and daughter, Yehudit and Natali, from Hamas at the Gaza boundary. The pair, it's being said, that were freed for humanitarian reasons. That's what Hamas has claimed. Now, United States President Joe Biden also stated that he is quite happy with the development and with the fact that 2 United States citizens, hostages in fact, have been released. And he also confirmed that he had spoken with the Raanans on the phone. It's being said that they were first captives released. They are in fact the first captives who have been released since the gunman raided Israel on the 7th of October. Do remember that 1,400 people have lost their lives in Israel so far, while 200 people have been taken as hostages. Now, they are currently on their way to an army base in central Israel, where their families were anxiously waiting. They are anxiously waiting to greet them. Israel still suspects that around 200 hostages are in Hamas custody, and Hamas has also stated that every time Israel bombs Gaza, there will be one or the other hostage that will have to pay the price for it. But that hasn't really stopped Israel from teaching a befitting lesson to Hamas after it carried out a massacre in southern Israel on the 7th of October. Meanwhile, moving on, Israel has vowed to wipe out Hamas in a relentless onslaught on the Gaza Strip, but has no obvious endgame in sight, with no clear plan for how to govern the ravaged Palestinian enclave, even if it triumphs on the battlefield. Former Jerusalem Bureau Chief Stephen Farrell explains.
For days, Israel has been bombarding Gaza, reducing entire areas to rubble. But the question is Is there an end game? Where does this stop, and when and how? Different sources have told Reuters journalists that they see no obvious sign of an exit strategy for Israel, that is, assuming they plan to exit. Nobody really knows at what point a military campaign will consider that its goals have been met and that we begin to hand over to a political situation. In the short term, the tactics are clear. They want to stop the rocket fire from Gaza and they want to crush Hamas. Gaza's just 360 square kilometres. Israel has mobilised 360,000 reservists to carry out this operation. So short-term goals like eradicating tunnels and maybe targeting individual Hamas leaders and killing them are no doubt achievable for a force that size. But beyond that, what happens? Hamas is not just a presence in Gaza. It has a presence across the occupied Palestinian territories. It has supporters across the Middle East and all around the world. So crushing Hamas is going to be very, very difficult for Israel, both militarily and politically. Other players in the region could also escalate matters. Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon. If they get involved, Israel will have to fight on different fronts. The last comparable ground attack that Israeli forces took part in was in 2006 in Lebanon, when they crossed the border and went into South Lebanon to try and catch Hezbollah forces who had captured Israeli soldiers. Now, I was there, I saw that battle. Israel had not come up against fighters like Hezbollah's in the West Bank in previous decades. The question is, how ready is Hamas for them with its tunnels, with its booby traps, with its trained fighters? How ready are they? How many casualties would they inflict on Israel? How many casualties would Israel inflict on Palestinians? And what is the tolerance on both sides for this? All of this is unknown.
Meanwhile, truckloads of aid are waiting to be transported over the Egyptian border into Gaza through the Rafah crossing, but the expected delivery is unlikely to raise spirits as the humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate in the Gaza Strip.
Truckloads of stockpiled aid are waiting to be transported into Gaza from Egypt through the Rafah crossing. Security forces say that machinery to repair roads has already been sent through in preparation, as more than 100 trucks await. Rafah, the only crossing not controlled by Israel, has been out of operation since the first days of the conflict. But the United States and Egypt have been pushing for a deal with Israel. On Wednesday, the White House said it had been agreed for up to 20 trucks to pass through, with hopes for more later, so long as those supplies do not reach Hamas. Most of Gaza's 2.3 million residents depend on aid. According to the United Nations, before the conflict started on October 7th, about 100 trucks daily were providing humanitarian relief to the enclave. But the upcoming arrival of aid is unlikely to raise spirits. Airstrikes and acute shortages of food, medicine and water are worsening the humanitarian situation in the Strip. In the city of Khan Yunis, the wounded, which includes UN workers and children alike, are being brought into hospital. These people have been injured as a result of airstrikes hitting a house on Thursday morning. Also in the city, those displaced from their homes have sought refuge in a wedding hall. This lady is among them and says the hall should be used for celebration, not as a place to mourn. Israel has said it will continue a blockade of humanitarian aid from Israel into Gaza until hostages held by Hamas are returned. Israel's bombardment and siege of Gaza is in retaliation for a devastating Hamas incursion into Israel on October 7th, during which 1,400 people were killed and hostages taken. Israel and Egypt have upheld a blockade of Gaza since Hamas took control of the territory in 2007, tightly controlling the movement of goods and people.
Newsline brings you the real pictures from the last post of the Rafah border crossing. If the border opens up, aid will go to the Gaza from this area. But the big question remains, will it?
मैं इस समय मौजूद हूँ इजराइल और इजिप्ट के बॉर्डर पर। जी हाँ, अगर आप ये फेंसिंग देख रहे हो, इस तरफ जहाँ मैं खड़ा हूँ ये इजराइल है और उस तरफ जो आप फेंसिंग देख रहे हैं वो पूरा इजिप्ट है। और इस समय यहाँ पर हालांकि आपको शांति नज़र आएगी। अगर आप देखें कि आपको नज़र आएगा एक वो बॉर्डर पोस्ट जो आपको नज़र आ रही है वो इजराइल की एक पोस्ट है। और अभी देखिए कि ये पूरा इलाका इजिप्ट का इलाका है जहाँ पर रसद लिए हुए या फिर जो रिलीफ मटेरियल लिए हुए वो लगातार ऐसे ट्रक्स आप लगातार तस्वीरों में देख रहे होंगे। यानी लगातार इन्हीं एरिया से इजराइल की तरफ जो इजिप्ट का बॉर्डर लगता है ये पूरा इलाका किस तरीके का है आप ये देखिए। मेरे कैमरा पर्सन अगर आपको इस तरफ घुमाएं और दिखाएं कि क्या इस समय यहाँ पे ताज़ा हालात हैं तो आपको देखकर समझ में आएगा कि अभी भी हालांकि यहाँ पर इजराइल की तरफ से सिक्योरिटी चार चौबंद कर दी गई है। बहुत ज़्यादा हाई अलर्ट पर ये पूरा इलाका है, लेकिन अभी आपको यहाँ पर शांति नज़र आ रही होगी क्योंकि यहाँ इलाकों के अंदर हालांकि ऐसा कोई कन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं होता, लेकिन फिर भी इजराइल ने इन इलाकों को भी बहुत सिक्योर कर रखा है। और ये सारा इलाका जो है वो इजिप्ट और इजराइल का बॉर्डर है। एक और जगह आगे जाकर मैं आपको दिखाऊंगा जहाँ पर इजिप्ट, इजराइल और गाजा का बॉर्डर लगता है, यानी वो ट्राई जंक्शन जहां से लगातार रसद का साजो सामान जा रहा है। आप ये देखिए कि कितना स्ट्रैटेजिक लोकेटेड या फिर इंपॉर्टेंट ये इलाका है जहां से आपको ये सारी जानकारियां मैं प्रोवाइड कर रहा हूं, दे रहा हूं कि आखिरकार इस समय क्या ताज़ा हालात यहां पर मौजूद हैं। मैं आपको फिर बता दूं कि वो फेंसिंग जो आप देख रहे हैं, देखिए किस तरीके की फेंसिंग की जाती है। बीच में 2 जगह ऐसी फेंसिंग की गई है, बीच में आपको एक नाला टाइप नजर आ रहा होगा और उसके दूसरी तरफ आपको इजिप्ट की फेंसिंग नजर आ रही होगी। यानी ये वो इलाके हैं जहां से इजराइल और इजिप्ट के बॉर्डर्स लगते हैं। और ये पूरा इलाका इस समय मैं आपको TV9 भारतवर्ष की टीवी पर कैमरे पे दिखाना चाह रहा हूं। इस समय हम एक बार फिर आपको बता दें कि हम इस समय इजिप्ट बॉर्डर पर मौजूद हैं। अगर आप देखें वो लगातार ऑब्जर्वेशन पोस्ट है इजिप्ट की, और ये पूरा बॉर्डर एरिया इजिप्ट के साथ जो इजराइल का लगता है वो करीबन 245 किलोमीटर का है। और आप मानिए कि ये सारा एग्रीमेंट यानी इस पूरे ज़मीन विवाद को इजिप्ट और इजराइल ने किस तरीके से 1979 के अंदर दोनों में समझौता हुआ था, और उसी के बाद 1906 के एग्रीमेंट पर यानी 1906 के बीच में जो समझौता हुआ था जिसे ग्रीन लाइन भी कहा जाता है, उसी के बेसिस पे 1971 के बाद ये बॉर्डर्स तय कर दिए गए। हालांकि जो फेंसिंग थी वो 2013 के अंदर इस तरीके से तैयार की गई, यानी सारी फेंसिंग जो है ये 2013 में इजराइल की तरफ से तैयार की गई। और अभी यहाँ के ताज़ा हालात हैं, क्योंकि ये इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है क्योंकि कई बार 2013 के बाद भी कई बार इन इलाकों से इन्फिल्ट्रेट करने की कोशिश की गई। अफ्रीकी देशों की तरफ से खासतौर पर कहा जाता है कि कई लोग इजराइल में घुसना चाहते थे और इन्हीं फेंसिंग की मदद से लगातार इजराइल ने इनको रोका। ये देखिए निस्ताने सिनाय, ये बोर्ड एक बार फिर आप देख लीजिए। ये सारा इलाका निस्ताने सिनाय यानी उस इलाके में मैं मौजूद हूँ जहाँ पर इजराइल की और इजिप्ट की सीमाएं लगती हैं, यानी ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एरिया है। हालांकि अभी ये शांत है, लेकिन यहीं से लगातार कहा जा रहा है कि कई बार इन्फिल्ट्रेशन के अटेम्प्ट किए जाते हैं जिसको सिक्योर करने का काम इजराइल की सेना करती है। लगातार इजिप्ट एक ऐसा देश है जो गाजा पट्टी में रसद सामग्री पहुंचा सकता है, क्योंकि इजराइल ने इसको लेकर साफ तौर पर आधिकारिक रूप से मना कर दिया, लेकिन इजिप्ट ही एक ऐसा बॉर्डर लगता है जो दोनों जगहों से यानी इजराइल और गाजा से लगता हुआ है। और इजिप्ट ही एकमात्र ऐसा रास्ता है जहां से रसद सामग्री दुनिया भर से गाजा में पहुंचाई जा सकती है। लेकिन हालांकि इस एरिया में किस तरीके से शांति है, क्योंकि इजराइल ने इसको लेकर भी साफ वार्निंग दे दी थी कि अगर इजिप्ट से गया हुआ कोई भी सामान, कोई भी राहत सामग्री हमास के पास पहुंची तो फिर हम उसे भी टारगेट करेंगे। लेकिन अगर आप इन एरियाज में देख रहे हो, मैं आपको दिखा रहा हूं कि आप मेरे कैमरा पर्सन दिखा रहे हो, वहां पे साफ तौर पर लिख दिया गया है कि सिर्फ आधिकारिक व्हीकल्स ही यहां से गुजर सकते हैं, यानी वो इजरायली अधिकारी व्हीकल्स जो इन इलाकों में मौजूद हैं। और मैं आपको ये दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं कि आखिरकार इस समय के ताज़ा हालात इजिप्ट और इजराइल बॉर्डर पर कैसे हैं। हालांकि दोनों देशों के बीच में कई चीज़ों को लेकर सहमति है, कभी भी यहाँ पर हालांकि लंबे समय से कोई ऐसी चीज़ें नहीं हो, लेकिन अभी किस तरीके के ताज़ा हालात हैं ये भी हम आपको दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। और मैं आपको ये भी बता रहा हूँ कि ये एकमात्र ऐसा रास्ता है जो गाजा पट्टी तक राहत सामग्री पहुँचा सकता है। 245 किलोमीटर का ये पूरा एरिया TV9 भारतवर्ष आपको सबसे पहले दिखा रहा है। मैं समय एक बार फिर से उस जगह पर मौजूद हूँ जिसका स्ट्रेटेजिक लोकेशंस बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है, और यही वो इलाका है जहाँ से सारी राहत सामग्री गाजा पट्टी जाएगी अगर इजराइल उसमें अवरोधक नहीं बनता। और इजराइल ये भी कह चुका कि अगर वो हमास के पास पहुंची तो फिर हम कार्रवाई करेंगे। इस समय मौजूद हूँ इजराइल और इजिप्ट के बॉर्डर पर। अगर आप देखें ये बॉर्डर के पास के वो इलाके हैं जो पूरी तरीके से खाली करा दिए गए हैं। हालांकि मैं आपको बताऊं कि इजिप्ट और इजराइल के बॉर्डर पर ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी एहतियात के तौर पर इजराइल ने सारे बॉर्डर्स एरिया खाली करा दिए गए हैं। और अगर आप देखें तो आपको यहाँ पर सिर्फ और सिर्फ कुछ चीज़ें नज़र आ जाएंगी, यानी जो मूलभूत चीज़ें हैं उनको यहाँ पर रखा गया है। बाकी सारे इलाके इस समय खाली करा दिए गए हैं। और मेरे कैमरा पर्सन निशांत आपको ये दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि आखिरकार इस समय के यहाँ ताज़ा हालात कैसे हैं। देखिए इजराइल और गाजा पट्टी पर ही जंग नहीं हो रही, लगातार जिस तरीके से माहौल बदल रहा है इसको लेकर इजराइल बहुत ज़्यादा सतर्क है। ना सिर्फ लेबनान बॉर्डर पर सीरिया के साथ बल्कि इजिप्ट के बॉर्डर के आसपास भी यहाँ शांति है, लेकिन कहा जा रहा है कि इस जगह कभी भी हालात बदल सकते हैं। और TV9 भारतवर्ष आपको इन इलाकों में लेकर आया है ये दिखाने के लिए कि अभी इस समय के ताज़ा हालात किस तरीके के हैं। और देखिए ये जो इलाका है ये राफा, यानी आप कह सकते हैं कि इसको पूरा इलाका, देखिए अगर आपको आखिरी झंडा आपको नज़र आ रहा हो, इसके अलावा सारा जो है इजिप्ट का एरिया है। और यहीं से लगातार जो सामान है जिसकी बात इजराइल का इजिप्ट कर रहा है वो जा रही है। और अगर आप दूसरी तरफ देख रहे हो, ये आखिरी चेक पोस्ट है जो मेरे कैमरा पर्सन आपको दिखाएंगे, वो इजराइल की चेक पोस्ट है, आखिरी चेक पोस्ट। और उसके इलाके सारा इलाका जो है फिर आपको सिर्फ इजिप्ट का इलाका नज़र आ जाएगा। TV9 भारतवर्ष आपको ये सारे इलाके इसलिए दिखा रहा है ताकि आप ये समझ सके कि अभी यहाँ के ताज़ा हालात क्या हैं। देखिए मेरे कैमरा पर्सन आपको निशान दूसरी तरफ दिखाइए, और ये देखिए ये इजिप्ट का इलाका है। और इस तरफ जहाँ ये आखिरी पोस्ट है ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ इजराइल की पोस्ट है। और ये इलाके इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है क्योंकि आप समझ सकें ताकि इस समय की जियो लोकेशन कैसी है, कौन कौन से इलाके हैं। और TV9 भारतवर्ष आपको ये सारे इलाके इसी तरीके से दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहा है।
St. Porphyrius Church that was sheltering hundreds of people from the war was hit by Israeli airstrikes. The Greek Orthodox Church, the oldest in the city located in the Zaitun neighborhood, has traditionally served as a sanctuary for both Christians and Muslims during Israel's periodic wars. Take a look at this report. Now, that's the St. Porphyrius Church that was sheltering hundreds of people from the war. It was hit by an Israeli airstrikes, and the Greek Orthodox Church, which is the oldest in the city, has traditionally served as a sanctuary for both Christians and Muslims. It has been reduced to rubble after an Israeli airstrike. 18 people, it is being said, that have been killed in the airstrike. That's the airstrike that has hit the Greek Orthodox Church in Gaza. The White House has proposed to bolster Israel and Ukraine. The total cost of the supplemental funding request was pegged at just over $105 billion. President Joe Biden hopes Congress will move urgently on the legislation, and he made the case for deepening U.S. support for its allies during a rare Oval Office address. Take a look.
In what was only his second ever speech from the Oval Office, U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday made his case to Americans that tens of billions in wartime aid should be sent to Israel and Ukraine, while also linking Hamas to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
American leadership is what holds the world together. American alliances are what keep us, America, safe. Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it.
A source familiar with Biden's plan told Reuters he will ask for $100 billion in new spending, including $60 billion for Ukraine and $14 billion for Israel. The remainder will be split between Asia, U.S. border security, and humanitarian aid. He spoke from the Oval Office less than 24 hours after returning from a whirlwind trip to Israel, meant to show U.S. solidarity after the attack by Hamas militants around 2 weeks ago that killed 1,400 Israelis. Biden acknowledged that Americans were asking why U.S. support matters in these wars. He framed his pitch as a necessary cost.
To support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine, is a smart investment that's going to pay dividends for American security for generations. Help us keep American troops out of harm's way. Help us build a world that is safer, more peaceful, more prosperous for our children and grandchildren.
Hours after the speech, Russia's foreign ministry fired back. saying on Telegram that Biden's comment calling the aid request an investment showed Washington benefits from proxy wars rather than fighting for ideas. Biden's comments come with some urgency. Israel is gearing up for a ground offensive in the Gaza Strip, and tensions are at a fever pitch after a deadly blast at a Gaza hospital. Biden said in his speech that Israel was not responsible, as Hamas officials have maintained. But as global protests grow over the hospital strike, he urged Israel not to, quote, give into blind rage, and recognize the need to supply humanitarian aid to Palestinians caught in the crossfire in Gaza.
Yesterday, in discussions with the leaders of Israel and Egypt, I secured an agreement for the first shipment of humanitarian assistance from the United Nations to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. As I said in Israel, as hard as it is, we cannot give up on peace. We cannot give up on a two-state solution.
Biden's spending request comes at a time of political chaos in Washington. The Republicans who control the House of Representatives have failed to unite behind a new speaker after ousting Kevin McCarthy from the job early this month. The funding measure, which must pass both the Democratic-led U.S. Senate and Republican-controlled but currently leaderless House, will test whether Republican lawmakers can be persuaded to set aside their opposition and approve the new spending.
Manish Jha, my colleague, is in Hebron, where he's at the Cave of the Patriarchs. A scholar explains the importance of the Cave of the Patriarchs and why there are claims and counterclaims on the religious site.
यहाँ पर तो मुझे बताया गया कि संभल के रहिएगा, गोली कभी भी चला सकते हैं, उधर से भी गोली आ सकती है और सिक्योरिटी वाले ने कहा कि हो सकती है कि हमारी भी गोली आपको लग जाए, इसलिए संभल कर रहिएगा। तो कुल मिलाकर यह है कि इस टेरिटरी पे आने के बाद सबसे पहले मुझे यही बताया गया कि आप जहां पर भी हैं उस जगह पर कभी भी गोली चल सकती है। ये हालात है। देखिए, बीते 24 घंटे का संघर्ष हमने देखा है। बीते 24 घंटे में हमने देखा है कि कैसे सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस और यहाँ के लोग एक दूसरे के साथ टकरा रहे थे। लगातार अचानक कुछ ही मिनट के अंदर हजारों की संख्या में लोग बाहर आ जाते हैं। मैं इस वक्त आपको उस पूरे इलाके में भी दिखाता हूं, बल्कि अगर मैं कहूं तो यह भी गलत नहीं होगा कि पूरे इस आबादी के बीच में जो सबसे सेफ प्लेस है, वो सेफ प्लेस में मुझे सिक्योरिटी पर्सन्स ने लाकर भेजा कि आप यहां खड़े होकर बात करिए ताकि कहीं से भी अगर गोली वगैरह आए तो आप यहां पर सुरक्षित रह सके। देखिए, पूरा जो इलाका है ये वेस्ट बैंक का वो इलाका है, फिलिस्तीनियों का वो इलाका है जहां पर कि हमें तुरंत ही गाजा पट्टी पर हुए हमले का असर तुरंत दिखता है। अस्पताल पर हुए हमले के बाद से तो यहाँ का माहौल बेहद तनावपूर्ण है। मुझे हमेशा ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे ये पूरा जेल का एक इलाका है, और जबकि यहूदियों के लिए ये सबसे पवित्र स्थलों में से एक है। लेकिन वेस्ट बैंक के इस इलाके में आकर साफ तौर पर एहसास होता है कि तनाव कितना चरम पर है। Right now I am in Hebron and I am joining with Mikhail and he will explain us where we are and how the situation right now here. So Mikhail, thank you so much for talking to us and please explain me where we are first.
We are in Hebron. Hebron is one of the second holiest cities in Israel. Hebron goes back, mentioned in the Bible, if I'm not mistaken, over 40 times. It is the burial place or the resting place of the forefathers of the founders of the Jewish nation, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, who we mention 3 times a day in our prayers. They are buried here, but we don't see this place just as a burial place, because if you come here on a Jewish holiday, where everybody in the world goes on a holiday to a resort or a hotel or something, you'll find many people coming here happily, dancing with music. It's a place of life, because we draw from them the ability to continue in what we're supposed to do in this world, which is to bring light to the world.
So when I was coming to this area, I saw like lots of territory or lots of houses by the Arabs. So does it mean that the whole area is surrounded by the Arab, and in between this is the place, a very religious and holy place for Hebrew?
Well, not necessarily, because there are other places, neighborhoods, Jewish places, communities which live on the road. If you came here 200 years ago, if you read the writings of Mark Twain or Tristram, who was a Christian priest who traveled the land in the middle of the 18th, end of the 18th century, you would find a desolate, barren land with almost no people living here. The land was, I would say, gives out its gift to the world and to the Jewish people. Since the Jewish people came back to the land is smiling at us. And you know, when a place becomes attractive and good, then it draws people from all around. So you would find probably a very small Arab population all the way from Jerusalem to Hebron, if we go back not a long time ago.
Since you mentioned about the land, so when I was going through, I was reading that this territory is owned by so many rulers, and right now it is, since it is in West Bank, so it is under the control of Palestine Authority, or what?
Well, I tend to object to the word Palestine, not because Palestine is not a word which we would use. The Jews never left the land of Israel. The land of Israel is a godly given land to the Jewish people. We don't have a right to the land, we have an obligation to the land. To us, the Bible, we are strongly connected to, otherwise we would have gone to Uganda or somewhere else, is not a history book. It's a book which tells us how the world is supposed to function correctly, for the world to become a place of light and not darkness. And therefore we have an obligation. A person cannot turn to his God and say to him, very nice, you know, there are so many commandments, I'll keep them all, but coming back to the land is something I will give up on. Every one of us who came from outside of Israel could probably have lived a very comfortable life somewhere else in the world where they were born or where they would possibly emigrate to. So we come back to the land in order to bring redemption to the world. And therefore, Jewish people are connected to their forefathers, we're connected to the land itself, and anybody who wants to join us and create, I would say, positivity in this part of the world is welcome to. Anybody who wants to destroy us or hurt us, then unfortunately evil has to be defeated to the end.
Switching our focus to some of the other international stories now. Ukraine is desperately short of judges and is kick-starting a nationwide hiring spree to fill more than 2,000 vacancies and vet around as many sitting judges for potential misconduct. Reforming the judiciary, even while the country is at war, is a requirement if it is to join the European Union one day.
Ira, a judge in Kiev, typically handles dozens of administrative cases and several criminal hearings a day. And she knows others who are even busier. Not only is Ukraine at war, but it's also desperately short of judges and on a long-awaited hiring spree to fill more than 2,000 vacancies. Cementing the rule of law is crucial to Ukraine's ambitions to join the European Union.
І, на жаль, кожен день приходиться
The amount of
тримати в
material
голові
that I
дуже
have to
дуже
work
багато
with,
інформації
that
і
fills my
працювати
head
з великим
each day is
обсягом
too much.
інформації,
Working
що
with all
також
this overload is very
є дуже
difficult.
складно. Знаєте, коли ми приходимо на роботу, ми
When we come to work, we cannot even imagine how many air raid alerts there will be and which
куди
bomb
нам, в яке
shelters we will have
сховище,
to run to.
скажімо, прийдеться спускатися, оберігатися від них.
Since the 2014 revolution toppled a pro-Moscow president, Ukraine has charted a pro-Western course and embarked on reforms. But they've met systemic resistance, watchdogs say. A vast backlog of cases has delayed justice for many people. Two bodies responsible for hiring and disciplining judges were effectively frozen for years and only recently relaunched under EU pressure. War has brought a new burden. About 100,000 alleged Russian crimes under investigation. District Court Judge Yulia Ivanina says only about 40 have so far been sent to the courts.
Considering that 100,000 war crimes have already been registered, just think how many new cases will be sent to courts. Even if all the vacancies are filled, all the hiring is done, the workload will still be enormous.
On top of hiring new ones, Ukraine must vet 2,000 or so sitting judges for misconduct. Endemic corruption means few Ukrainians trust the courts. High-profile scandals include the recent arrest of the former head of the Supreme Court. He denies taking a $2.7 million bribe. Making sure appointees are politically independent is another tough task. Ludmila Volkova is on the commission tasked with both new hires and integrity checks.
Those who keep their posts, whose competence we confirm, will shape the new era of judicial power in Ukraine.
The judiciary overhaul is part of a broader crackdown on corruption. A survey in July found 89% of Ukrainians see corruption as the most serious problem facing their country, apart from the war. Tens of thousands of Ukrainians have died to defend their fragile democracy, and experts say tolerance of official abuse has worn thin.
Russia has detained a journalist of a US-funded Radio Free Europe for failing to register as a foreign agent while visiting for a family emergency. Here's a full report.
Alsu Kamasheva, an editor at US-funded Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, has been detained by Russia. That's according to the broadcaster. RFE said the detention was for failing to register as a foreign agent while visiting Russia for a family emergency. Kamasheva, an editor with Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty's Tatar Bashkir service, holds both US and Russian passports. Russia's tightened its control over the media since the start of the Ukraine war. Leading independent news outlets have closed, and many journalists and publications designated as so-called foreign agents. The term, which carries Cold War connotations of espionage, is used in Russia to label organizations, journalists, activists and celebrities deemed to be engaging in political activity with foreign support. After the war and the arrest of Wall Street Journal correspondent Evan Gershkovich in March on spying charges, almost all US journalists have left the country. The State Department repeatedly urged US citizens to leave Russia. Kamasheva travelled to Russia on May 20th. As she sought to leave Russia at the end of her trip at Kazan airport, she was detained and her passports were confiscated as she awaited her return flight. She was fined for failing to register her US passport with Russian authorities. In a statement, RFE's acting president Jeffrey Gedmin said, "Alsu is a highly respected colleague, devoted wife and dedicated mother to 2 children. She needs to be released so she can return to her family immediately." Russia's Tatar Inform news agency said Kamasheva had failed to register as a foreign agent while gathering information on Russia's military activity. She could face up to 5 years in prison, according to RFE. The Russian government has yet to comment.
In a significant market development, Tesla and other electric vehicle manufacturing companies suffered a sharp decline in their stock prices on Thursday. Tesla, which is the world's highest valued automobile manufacturer, saw a staggering drop of 9%. Now remember, this equals to a potential loss of around $70 billion in its market value. Now this downturn comes days after Tesla CEO Elon Musk expressed concern over the impact of high interest rates on consumer demand. Take a look at this report.
Shares of Tesla and other electric vehicle makers plummeted on Thursday, a day after Tesla CEO Elon Musk warned that high interest rates could sap consumer demand. The world's most valuable automaker sank more than 9% and was set to lose about $70 billion in market value. On a post-earnings call Wednesday, Musk said he wanted more clarity on the economy before ramping up a planned Tesla factory in Mexico. His concerns? High borrowing costs that could deter consumers and, quote, paycheck-to-paycheck pressures on American workers. The comments marked a change in tone from Musk, who last year said his company was, quote, recession resilient. The EV maker missed quarterly revenue estimates by the most in more than 3 years, despite hefty price cuts. Tesla is not the only EV maker worried about demand. General Motors this week said it would delay production by a year of its Chevrolet Silverado and GMC Sierra electric pickup trucks at a plant in Michigan. Ford last week said it would temporarily cut 1 of 3 shifts at a plant that builds its F-150 Lightning pickup trucks. The automaker in July already slowed its EV ramp-up, shifting investment to commercial vehicles and hybrids. And EV startup Lucid reported a near 30% plunge in third-quarter production this week, while Amazon-backed Rivian, which makes electric pickup trucks and SUVs, also disappointed investors this month when it shied away from raising its full-year production forecast. Shares of Lucid and Rivian were down roughly 3% and 4% respectively in Thursday afternoon trading.
Now on Wednesday, the US significantly reduced sanctions on Venezuela's oil industry due to a deal made between the government and the opposition parties regarding the 2024 election. Here's a full report.
The Biden administration on Wednesday eased tough sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector. The move comes after a deal reached between the Venezuelan government to begin lifting bans that kept opposition party candidates from running in elections next year. Wednesday marks the most extensive rollback of Trump-era restrictions on Venezuela, which were imposed after President Nicolas Maduro's 2018 re-election, which the U.S. and other Western governments rejected as a sham. As part of the rollback, the U.S. Treasury Department authorized Venezuela, an OPEC member, to produce and export oil to its chosen markets for the next 6 months without limitation. The U.S. has been seeking ways to boost global flows of oil to alleviate high prices caused by sanctions on Russia and OPEC Plus decisions to reduce output. The sanctions relief comes a day after Maduro's government and the opposition on Tuesday reached an agreement for an internationally monitored vote to be held in the second half of next year. Venezuela ruling party official Jorge Rodriguez, who led the government's negotiating team at talks with the opposition, said that the sanctions relief affected all oil activities and that, quote, the possibility of any person or company coming to Venezuela to invest is totally open. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken welcomed Maduro's concessions, but said Washington has given him until the end of November to begin lifting bans on opposition presidential candidates and to start releasing political prisoners and, quote, wrongfully detained Americans. A senior State Department official who spoke to Reuters on condition of anonymity threatened reversal of the sanction relief unless Maduro acts accordingly.
Oscar winner George Clooney and other top Hollywood stars have offered $150 million to the SAG-AFTRA Actors Union as part of a proposal to end the actors' strike as it nears its 100th day. The offer would provide the union an extra $150 million over 3 years and could also help fund improved health benefits.
Actor George Clooney and other top Hollywood stars have offered $150 million to the SAG-AFTRA Actors Union as part of a proposal to end a strike that has lasted almost 100 days. Clooney's spokesperson confirmed the offer on Thursday, saying the money given the union over the next 3 years could help fund improved health benefits. Having better health benefits has been one of the union's demands during negotiations with major studios like Netflix and Warner Brothers. The entertainment news site Deadline first reported the story, citing Clooney as saying that, quote, a lot of top earners want to be part of the solution. He also said top stars would only collect residuals once lower-paid actors received theirs. A SAG-AFTRA spokesperson didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Clooney's remarks come after talks between the union and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers broke down last week. Members of SAG-AFTRA have been on strike since July, disrupting TV and film production, which has left thousands of crew members and actors without work. Early this month, the Writers Guild, which had been striking in parallel, ratified a new 3-year contract with salary increases as well as better health benefits and pension funds. They were on strike for 148 days.
In a significant development on the 21st of October, the Indian Space Research Organisation successfully launched the Gaganyaan first flight test vehicle Abort Mission 1, aimed at demonstrating the crew escape system's performance. This mission represents a significant milestone in India's effort to demonstrate that it is possible to send humans into space.
25 meters each.
The crew for this mission will be transported to the designated orbit using the LVM-3 rocket equipped with various stages, including solid, liquid and cryogenic propulsion systems. The test vehicle mission is the predecessor to the Gaganyaan program, which aims to send humans into space on a low Earth orbit of 400 kilometers for 3 days and bring them safely back to the Earth. India will demonstrate its human spaceflight capabilities in a mission called Gaganyaan, scheduled to launch in 2024. The country will set up a space station by 2035 and work on a Venus orbiter as well as a Mars lander.
The confirmation is available
Now, the TV-D1 initially scheduled for liftoff at 8 a.m. from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota faced an unexpected turn of events as the launch was called off just seconds before liftoff due to an anomaly. This mission represents a significant milestone in India's effort to demonstrate, to show the world that it is possible to send humans into space.
I'm very happy to announce the successful accomplishment of the TV-D1 mission. The purpose of this mission was to demonstrate the crew escape system for the Gaganyaan program through a test vehicle demonstration in which the vehicle has gone up to a Mach number, which is the speed of sound, slightly above that, and initiated an abort condition for the crew escape system to function. The crew escape system took the crew module away from the vehicle, and subsequent operations of the crew module separation from the crew escape system, all the parachutes opening and touched down in the sea at the required velocity has been very well accomplished, and we have got confirmation of the data of all of this. And we will be further doing the approach recovery operations of the crew module to be collected from the sea, brought to the port by the ships. That activity will continue to happen. Till now, based on the data, everything has performed very nominally and perfect. I would also like to tell the reason for why we had a hold. We initially wanted the launch to happen at 8 o'clock in the morning, but there was some weather-related issues. We have rescheduled the launch to 8:45 a.m. But after going through the nominal liftoff process, there was a hold issued by the ground computer, which is called the automatic launch sequence computer, which detected a sort of a non-conformance for allowing the engine to continue the thrusting to further go. So this happened due to a monitoring anomaly in the system. So we could identify it very, very fast and correct it. And to make the stage ready, it took some time to refill the gases. And that once that has been completed, we went through the proper automatic launch sequence, which checked the entire health of the vehicle. And finally, the mission computer and the ground checkout computer authorized the launch to take off, which released the rocket from the launch pad, and subsequent activities of the flight as well as the post termination abort sequence also got executed perfectly. So I'm very happy that our team could understand in case of any anomaly how to rectify and come back fast. And congratulations to everybody.
Sir, this is like, never before attempt. It's a bouquet of 3 experiments put together, and we have now seen the fragrance and the characteristics of all 3 systems with what we wanted to test through this experiment or this mission. The test vehicle, the crew escape system, the crew module, everything I think we have perfectly demonstrated in the very first attempt, but for the initial hitch, but that's nothing a problem at all. All the systems performed well. I thank you for all the support provided by the entire team of ISRO across all centers of VSSC, LPSC, IPRC, IASU, SDSC, HSFC, etc. Thank you all, sir. It was a penance for us for the last 3-4 years, and then we have reached the D-Day today. And it was a very happy occasion that we could make it on the very first attempt. Thank you.
Well, that's all we have in this edition of the Bulletin. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day ahead.
BrahMos, stealthy, lethal.